Hi, welcome to ADHD Friendly. I am Patty. I am your ADHD coach, all about finding ways to tilt that playing field by creating more ease and less friction to be able to get more things done. If you would like more support, I invite you to join my membership community, ADHD Friendly. You can find out more at ADHD-Friendly.com because at ADHD Friendly, we are all about ADDers getting more things done. So let's dive into this episode. This is episode 196, and it's all about what makes a book ADHD friendly. So I'm going to be talking a lot about some tips if you would like to reconnect to books a little bit more, if you really have never enjoyed books because your brain struggles to focus on stories. I've got some tips to just explore if there's a way in. I want to help you find it. And as always, I'll start with a celebration. I have a vegetable celebration. Maybe I'll just see some of my celebrations over here if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, ADHD Friendly. I'm also going to update my spending. I have a book app I'm going to share that I use to keep up with my reading. That's my tip for this week. And then, of course, our main topic, what does make a book ADHD friendly? And then at the end, I'll highlight this week's book, as I do every episode. So let's start with my celebration. I am in the full excitement of my garden this year. I am growing some lovely tomatoes, little cherry tomatoes, little banana peppers, and some cucumbers. They're not growing as plentifully as I would like by this time in the season. The tomatoes seem to all be coming in, but the cucumbers are still kind of sparse, but at least I'm getting some. Last year I didn't get any. So I'm taking that as a win. And this is my first year growing banana peppers. I'm not really a fan of banana peppers, but my son wanted the plant. So I've been taking care of it, and I might try one. I always say I don't really think I like them. My tomatoes are rolling on the ground, but I'm willing to give them a try and see if I actually don't. I think I'm making that judgment without really knowing for sure. So since I made them, I grew them, I'm going to try them this year. So that's my celebration. Also, what I purchased this week, that's another celebration. I haven't purchased anything. So I shared throughout the month of June, I was really focusing on no spending June. In July, I'm trying to hold myself to cash only spending. And I haven't even done that. I'm just really not putting myself out into areas where I struggle with that impulsivity. So far, so good. And the thing that I didn't even realize that I want to celebrate is, as I'm recording this, we are in day 2 of Amazon Prime days. Remember when Prime Day used to be a day, and now it's like multiple days. And there's so many other stores that have jumped on this kind of promotional bandwagon. And I don't know if I've ever gone through an Amazon Prime days event and not purchased anything, let alone didn't even realize it was going on. So I realized it yesterday, and only because I saw like articles in my news app, and I was like, oh, is that going on? Because I just haven't been online shopping. And it's just something I'm continuing to notice, how much easier it is to not even be drawn into it, even at the idea of there being some like really amazing sales. And I'm like, typically I could like, oh, I could get ahead on Christmas shopping or any birthdays coming up. And I'm just kind of really almost subconsciously resisting it because I feel like it, as I'm thinking it through, I feel like it might be a slippery slope. So I just want to kind of build in another celebration there that I am so far still not letting the marketing and that dopamine hit that I get from shopping drive my decision making. So just continuing to learn what's working for me and how it's impacting my thinking. So just highlighting that. And so once again, this week, there's no product of the week because I haven't been purchasing anything to highlight a new product. So again, kind of a celebration in that. All right, on to my tip for this week, and that is a reading app. So I've got a couple of pictures here. Again, if you're listening to this, I invite you to check out my YouTube show, ADHD Friendly, where you can see all of the things I'm sharing. So I use an app called Reading List, and it's free. There are no limits on the free version. It's only available for iPhone or iOS or Mac users. So if you're not an Apple owner of an Apple product, this isn't currently something you'll be able to use. But if you are, and you're looking for an easy way to keep up with what you're reading, I love it because it helps me remember what I've read. Because I'll like sometimes start reading a book and I'm like, gosh, this is familiar. And I get frustrated because I can't remember if I've read it. So I've been using this app now since 2021. So I can go back at least that far and be like, okay, wait, did I read this? And I can just search the title and it will come right up. I can also note, like if I have a list of what I want to read. So it lets me complete books. So I have a list of what I finished, and then I have books that I want to read or am currently reading. And in my want to read list, I'll go in there when I add the book to my list, and I will put down where I heard about it or who recommended it to me, because I will get completely disconnected to it often before I get to reading it. And that helps me to reconnect if I remember who recommended it to me or where I learned about it. And I also, when I'm done, can rate them. So I can, give it a star rating. And that also helps me to remember whether or not I liked something. And I'll typically write a couple of sentences, and I just do it voice to text inside the memo part, where I can go back and remember, basically what the book's about in a couple of words that helps me remember what it was and what I liked or didn't like about it. You can upgrade to, there's a pro version. So I just want to share the free version I used for years. I got the pro version about a year and a half ago, I think, because it's $34 for the lifetime of the app. And I love lifetime subscriptions where I don't have to keep paying. You can do month to month, which I just checked before recording this. It's $2 a month or $14 a year, or again, like I said, $34 for the lifetime. But if you've never used this app and you're just looking for one to try, definitely I recommend trying the free version and see if it's a good fit for you. The difference with the pro version is it will sync in the cloud, so that if you are looking at the app on different devices, it will sync them so that you have the same information and the same updated, like where you're progressing. It'll give you like the percentage that you finished with the book. You can see that no matter what device that you're in, it'll be the same. It also tracks your rereads. So for this summer, I reread Pride and Prejudice again. And since I've been tracking, it shows that I've read it 3 times. And I really enjoy that because it also shows I typically have been reading it in the summer, which wasn't even a pattern I was aware of. But it also, this was the reason I subscribed, it tracks unfinished books. So sometimes I don't want it clogging up my to read list, but I also didn't finish it. So I can't count it as a book that I finished. And so before then I would just delete it because there was no in between. In the pro version, you can save it as unfinished. And in there, I can add a note about why I didn't finish it. So I don't accidentally, my brain does this, I'll pick it up and I'll start reading it again. And then I'll get frustrated. Like, why didn't I remember I already tried this and I wasn't liking it. So it saves me time. So that was really the reason I subscribed to the pro version, just to have access to that one feature. So there's not a lot of difference between the free and the pro. I just want to highlight that if that would be something that you would need to have if you don't finish a lot of books, but you want to remember that you tried it and you didn't like it, so you don't try to read it again. Okay, so this is what the app looks like. I just printed out a picture so you can see this is the little icon. And again, it's only available in the Apple Store because it's not available on other platforms. And its description is: organize your reading, track books you've read, record a list of books you want to read, and organize your reading with a reading list. Free app for iOS, iPad OS, and Mac OS. No account or sign up required. I love this. This is run by a single person, and it's really feels like I'm supporting a person and their work as opposed to like a really big like conglomerate that might get bought out and changed at some point. Not that this, I guess, couldn't, as I say that, but I just like the ability to log my reading without having to have it shared everywhere. That really didn't speak to me. I'm not somebody that wants to share everything. That doesn't resonate for me. I want to share intentionally, not as a default. So I like that. And this is what a book looks like in the app when you open it up. It will show you the name. It will show you if you've started or not. It'll show you how far into the book you are. You update it whenever you would like to. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to update. You can update by page or percentage, depending on if you're like listening or reading an ebook versus a physical book. If you put the page number in, it'll tell you what percentage you're done. If you put in the percentage, obviously, if you're reading an ebook or listening to an audiobook, it will tell you that. And then the details of the book below. And then down here, you can see the categories. So you can see the books in your category. If you push to read, it'll come up your list of the things that you want to read. These are the books you've finished. Organizing stats settings. So really simple, intuitive, easy to use. And again, here's the image if you're interested in the pro version, what you get with the $2 a month or $14 a year or $34 for the lifetime fee. Pretty cool. So that's my tip for the week. If you are trying to be a little bit more connected to what you're reading in a way that works for you, check it out. See if it would serve your reading needs. All right, now for our main topic, and that is what does make a book ADHD friendly. So I've shared in the past, I was a librarian, a library specialist for a school with students that were either diagnosed with ADHD and or a learning disability. So the school was serving, and it kind of varied, but generally second grade through 12th grade. So a lot of varied reading levels and reading interests. And I needed to select books that were really engaging. So whether it was through illustrations or the way the text was on the page, or the way the story could grab you, typically waiting until you're 5 chapters into a book before you're into it, it would be too big of an ask for a lot of the students I was working with. So I needed things that were easy to read and hold your attention. So it was pulling you back in, as opposed to you be like, oh, I've got to go read more. I wanted you to be like, I can't wait to find out what happens next. So I'm going to share some tips to how to pick a book that is more likely to be friendly for somebody with ADHD. And I've got 3 categories. I'm going to share tips for children's books, tips for young adults and teens, and tips for adult books. So I'm going to start with children. So finding books that are engaging, books that are predictable, and maybe even adding a sensory element are really key. So think about features like repetitive and rhythmic, those rhyming books. They're bright, engaging illustrations are going to be important, because that helps maintain the interest and connect another element besides just reading words or listening to a story. They're seeing images. Interactive elements, that goes with that sensory. So maybe there's some flaps that you're lifting up, or textures within the book that are prompting you to engage with it. That clear, predictable structure is really key, and emotionally connecting characters. So they're expressing their emotions and connecting them for the reader or the child that's being read to. So these can be read out of order is key. If you're reading a series, being able to pick up books, especially if you're getting them from like libraries, and a lot of our kiddos will want to read things in order. It's really important, if that's not going to be possible, or it's going to throw off the momentum that they're gaining in reading books, that they pick books that can be read out of order. So it's not going to be frustrating. Like, I don't know who this person is. I don't remember, this part of the story, or this doesn't make any sense. That they can, get into a series and pick up any one that's available and keep reading them. So my favorite example for younger kids of this genre is Dr. Seuss. One of my all-time favorites. Here are my 2 favorite books I always have actually right here in my office, because they just make me happy to look at them. The Sneetches and Yertle the Turtle. But the book that I'm going to share is one of my kids' favorite books from when they were little. And that is, so it's The Sneetches and Other Stories. And it was the other story that my kids loved. And it was called What Was I Scared Of? And it's the 3rd story in this Sneetches and Other Stories book. And it's all about this little guy walking through the woods, and he encounters this pair of pants with no one in them. And one of my kids was so scared of these pants, but loved the story being read to them. And they would snuggle in every time and, totally be like, oh, they're coming, they're running, they're chasing him. And they just loved the images and the story and the colors and the experience. And I just think Dr. Seuss did this brilliantly. And in the majority of his books, they were just so fun to read. When he's in a boat and the fans are chasing him in the boat, I just love it. So again, there's a lot of rhyme in Dr. Seuss books, a lot of predictability in them. And they start, like, if you think of like Green Eggs and Ham, there's a lot of repetitive rhyming so the kids can join in. Yertle the Turtle, one of my favorite lesson books. I love the images in here where Yertle, the king of everything he can see, keeps climbing up on top of turtles, and poor Yertle's at the very bottom. But I love the images of, if you look, all of the turtles look so forlorn and sad, and all of the other animals look happy, and they're just, kind of free and doing what they want. And the turtle on top, Yertle, just all marvelous Yertle, feeling like he's just it on a stick, and little Mac all the way down here at the bottom, just feeling so oppressed, so stood upon. And I just love the images of all of the turtles throughout. My favorite book to read around with my kids, and I get emotional every time I read it because I just love the ending. So that's just a few recommendations for how to pick children's books, keeping in mind engagement, predictable stories or patterns, and that sensory support where, not all books will have it, but the more interactive they are, especially for younger kids, the better. But the images, I think a lot of times is what's drawing them in. Okay, number 2, these are books for young adults and teens. So for this category of reader, it's all about what's relevant to them, that it's connecting with them on some level and their identity, and that's really driving their choice. So some ADHD-friendly features or themes to think about are a fast-paced plot with quick wins, quick things that are pulling them in and reinforcing them continuing to read it. So this keeps their engagement high and wants them coming back to keep finding out more. Character-driven narratives that really can help them stay connected and interested to what's going on. Short chapters. So if the chapters, this is like something I've seen time and time again, if the chapters are too long, it feels like the amount of focus is just too high of an ask. So that can really get in the way of them continuing. Even as an adult, I love books with, 5, 8 pages to a chapter at the most. If it starts getting into 20 or 30, it's not that I won't read the book, but it's definitely more of I'm going to really need to like dial in my focus at a different level to keep going with this. And I'm aware of that. So, honoring that kiddos can be aware of that too. And maybe it's even like breaking it up. I love to use these little flags. I do this a lot with my college students where they'll go through and I'm like, okay, if it's like a really dense text that you're trying to read, going through and finding, okay, I'm only like, there's like 50 pages and there's no charts, there's no graphics, it's just dense text. Giving yourself permission to kind of mark a place where there's like a paragraph break or a section break where you're like, okay, I'm just going to read to here instead of expecting them to do the entire thing. So breaking it up can really be key, but giving your brain a place that you've decided will be like that chapter break, if the chapters are longer than is ideal for their focus. Audiobook versions. This is an important adaptation to keep in mind. So I'm really excited that the recognition of audiobooks being just another way to consume a book instead of judging like, well, that's not really reading. For a lot of us, audiobooks is the way that's going to work, because sitting still and reading might be a really difficult thing for us to do. So having the option, and I love this I did this for my kids when they were younger, listen to, or I would read them the first couple of chapters and then they would take it and read it on their own. But for them to sit and try to get into a story where they didn't know what was going to happen, they weren't familiar with the characters yet, it would create a lot of resistance. So sometimes it's just listening to the beginning, but having the physical book available as well, so they can continue reading it if they want to switch. So I love that as like a little hack to get into the book. Choosing books that are open-ended or allow them, kind of like choose your adventure, like to choose their own story ending or experiencing it different ways can be fun. And again, stories where something's always happening. There's always some interest, some level of anticipation that's keeping you coming back for more. So those are just some things to look for that young adult and tween age group. And then finally, for adult ADHD friendly books, these are the ones that we really have to give ourselves permission to read imperfectly. And by that, I mean, shorten the sections. Like I was sharing, if the chapters are too long, allow yourself to listen to the book or look at an ebook if that works for you. My favorite is to have a book on all three formats. I get them from the library in ebook format and audio format, and then a physical one. So I can read it in any format that works for me. And it's how I finish so many books, because I don't limit myself to only things I'm going to sit down and physically read, because sometimes it's not available in a physical book, or it's only available in a physical book and it's not available in ebook. So then I kind of prioritize, like, this is what I'm going to sit and read, and this is what I'm going to listen to, and this is what I'm going to read on my ebook. So just keeping your options imperfect, allowing yourself to be flexible with what works for you. So looking for those kind of, depending on what you're reading, if you're reading like a nonfiction or a biography, maybe more section headings or bullet points with information, breaking up the content to make it easier to consume. I like a conversational tone, even if I'm reading nonfiction or a biography. I do better with it if it's written not as though it's an academic kind of voice, like just kind of telling me. I like to read it still as like a story or a conversational tone. Books that have visual aids like charts and illustrations can support breaking up text. For me, this is absolutely essential for nonfiction books or real life stories. And my favorite example of that is a book that, I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's my favorite. So this is the illustrated edition of David McCullough's 1776. Comes in this case. You'll see it's pretty worn because I have just gone through this so many times. So here's my favorite thing. Literally from the first page, it is chock full of images of these little pockets with little stickers, these little envelopes that you take out the inserts. And it's all of these pages and documents that are recreated from the time that they're talking about in the story that you can take out and interact with and read. And this is like, oh my gosh, even now as I look at it, I just love it so much. This little, like, recreated with like ink stains and coffee stains and with the coloring of the original, the way the paper would have looked and the size and the print that it would have been in. It's a recreation of the actual document. And the book is chock full of these. And I remember literally viscerally feeling this. I read this back in like 2010 or so. And I remember thinking, if history was like this when I was in high school learning about it, I would have not been able to put it down. I was on the edge of my seat reading this, and I literally was like, we did win. We did win. Because it just felt so impossible. There's letters in here from George Washington to his wife. There's maps in here that they actually drew and used at the time. It is the most amazing thing. If they did this for all history books, I would never put them down. Like it's an actual recreation of the letter with the hole in it. Like it's just so beautifully done. I am such a huge fan of this. It makes me want to read it all over again right now. So books that interact and you can interact with are one of my favorite things, particularly, like I said, for those nonfiction historical topics. I already talked about available in multiple formats. So giving yourself permission to consume them in the way that works for you or in multiple ways, getting the audio version as well as the printed version and so forth. And just allowing yourself to tap into your strengths. So I remember it used to be really something that, and even I used to frown upon, if somebody was like, well, I listened to the book, and I was like, right, that's not really counting. And now I will say very confidently, no, I listened to that one, or I'll think, okay, wait, did I read that or listen to it? Because often there might be a book I did both with. And so I'll have memories of the voice from the audio, but then I also remember pages, the way that the pages were outlined because I was reading it at the same time. So just staying positive and allowing yourself to do what works for you so that you go into your library or a bookstore or just your bookcase where you already have books that you've been intending to read and allow yourself to pick what's most sparkly to your brain. So it's pulling you in and you can't wait to just give yourself an opportunity to read. And if you haven't read anything for a while and you've always struggled to read, give yourself permission to just read like a page a day. Just read a page. It's more than nothing, and it will keep you going forward. And then you'll notice what works and doesn't work. I know for me, if I don't read like the first 20 or 30 pages in the first sitting of the book, I'm going to have to reread it because I don't have a sense of the characters and they're not sticky in my brain. I haven't really held on to them. And so then I'll get frustrated because I'll have to go back and reread, and I hate rework. So I need to start a new book when I've got a little bit of time to sit down and at least, read for at least 30 minutes or so to get enough into it that I can come back to it and remember what was going on. So just notice what works for you. Have fun with it. Reading is just that opportunity to connect with other places and other lives and other experiences that it just takes us from where we are well beyond where we can envision. It's a magical thing. So remember, if you are trying to recommend books to somebody with ADHD or select them for yourself, think about books that create opportunities for bite-sized information that are very engaging, that are flexible, and allow you to do what works for your brain. If you have read any books, like I just shared my obvious joy of 1776 by David McCullough, if you've read any books that felt very ADHD friendly to you, please post in this episode 196. Would love to hear what books felt like they were ADHD friendly for your brain. All right. And that leads us beautifully into my book for this week. And it is called Speak to Me of Home. And it's by Janine Cummins. I loved this. So this just came out in May of this year, May 13th, it came out. And this is a tale of mothers and daughters, love and loss, as well as the spoken and unspoken stories that shape a family's sense of home. I received an advance copy of this from NetGalley. So thanks to NetGalley for allowing me the opportunity to read it before it was published. It covers 3 different timelines in a family's saga. It's the daughter, her mother, and her grandmother. And it touches on different cultures, and it's told so beautifully. You feel like you are living through the experiences with them. I adored this book. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Highly, highly recommend it. Found it very ADHD friendly. And that leads me to my quote. I'm going to quote Stephen King here, who is such a prolific writer and reader that I just find him so inspiring. He says, books are a uniquely portable magic. I love that. And then one final quote from Dr. Seuss, of course. And he says, the more you read, the more things you'll know. The more you learn, the more places you'll go. That's it for this week. I hope you found something that sparked your brain and creates a little bit of ease in your life. Wouldn't be ADHD friendly without that. Until next time, tally ho.